Oh, good evening. Welcome to another edition of Declutter Talk Show. I would rather say talk show than podcast because it's generally me interviewing people, getting their perspective on things, talking about different things. And we know we had Nick on on the kind of talk show last time, speaking about how he believes that men kind of still have their kind of position in life where, and a woman basically underneath is a gold digger. Was that one of the things that was said? And that men are now, it seems in a way maybe blaming women for men not being who they are before, but that's kind of controversial as well. And as I gave Nick his platform to speak about his views on what he believed men are lacking now and how women are taking over the show and how they don't have their place anymore and that women have these high expectations but don't reach these expectations for themselves, and how men are now believed to have to give a certain amount of money before a woman will entertain them, and also believes that a woman goes for status over attraction. Well, I'd like to welcome Michelle this week to Declutter, who is going to tell us a bit about the history of why she believes that men, in fact, especially Scottish, are actually got a great hatred towards women. Woo! So, Michelle, would you like to introduce yourself and also tell us a wee bit about what you actually mean by that?
Hi, I'm Michelle, and what I mean by that is females throughout Scotland have been oppressed all their lives, and the lack of education back then is not the same as the education now. And I believe that, well, Nick did say that he's not interested in a woman's education or what she does and things like that. It's of no interest, which is completely wrong. We've had great females fight for our education, right up to the point now that we have free education in Scotland, and we should all be using it. And we should all be knowing Scottish history, not just European history, worldwide history, or everything that's happened in England and Wales. Ireland and Scotland are very not much talked about. We're under the same bracket. On the female and male things it happened. So yes, it's been horrific for females.
Yeah, I can interject. I actually played a play back in when I was doing my higher national diploma, I think, and I played Mrs. Welsh. Was it Mrs. Welsh or Mrs. Davis? I can't. It was what really buffed the posh voice that I've got. Remember, I do the posh voice sometimes. Well, that's where I got that. I did Blue Stockings, and it was actually girls could go and learn the same subject as the guys, but they couldn't take the exam. And did you know also that in Scotland we did not allow our females to take exams until after England? So there you go. There's another wee fact just to onto the new trajectory. You know what I mean? So it was very much if your dad had allowed you to go to school, and very much back then, men also dictated the children. And if you wanted to leave, then mothers were to leave without the children. So yeah.
Mm-hmm. And yeah, well, on the subject of asking permission, Nick did say a very abusive statement last week, and that's that women should not be heard, should be seen and not heard. It's actually much worse than that. The statement came 600 years ago by a male clergyman, and it was children should not be seen and heard, mostly females, and that you should enter a room. You shouldn't you shouldn't speak, not unless spoken to. It also applied to males, but mostly directed to females. So the statement was wrong because the statement has been used behind closed doors to beat kids, beat women. It's been withheld in a church for years, and we know what's happened with churches and children. So when I heard him say that, for me, the gasp was this man wants females to be quiet about abuse, sexual abuse, psychological abuse, emotional abuse. And I hope that's not true, because I don't want any male to think that it's okay to just put up with it, put up with whatever he's doing, take whatever backhander he's going to hand out on a Saturday night. And that days are gone. Well, they're not gone. It still happens. But as females, we're getting better at speaking out and defending ourselves. We shouldn't have to put up with being quiet. It's just wrong. Why do you want them to be quiet?
I will say in his defence, I think in a roundabout way, he's trying to make men be more or less like that type where they just do what the kind of narcissistic woman says. And I think that maybe came across. And I don't think he meant that women should be silent about abuse. I really don't think. I do know him on a kind of personal level, and I don't think, but I know what you mean, why he goes for the shock factor. And he has got this tunnel view that where men should be the leader, you should accept the leader, and that you should accept that deep down you really want money and just to sit in the house. And I don't think that is the case for women, but I don't believe that he thinks that women should be abused in any way and be silent towards it.
Well, I've done a tiny little bit of research into this quotation that men should be earning a wage before a woman would entertain them, and I had never heard of it because I'm not in the media like that, or nosing or interested, to be quite honest. So it started in America. It's a very American thing where, like, the housewives, Orange, whatever that programs is, and they're stating that their men should be earning anything with 125,000. And well, can we get one thing clear? The average full-time wage in the UK is about 40,000. So that's that out the water. And that, so nobody really thinks like that. You might have little gold diggers, as he called them, saying, my man will have money. And that bit, in reality, nobody's got that money. We're needing 4 wages coming into a household these days because everything's up on price. And that, so yeah, I found it's a very American thing about the 401k and the 501 and things like that. So yeah, that's not females. Females are wanting equality just as much as males are wanting equality. And that's it. Equality for equality's sake, love for love's sake, and to be seen by each other. That's what females, and I think that's what males are wanting too. They're not this domination. They want equal partnership.
So you have an interesting story about Scottish history where you believe that maybe the consensus where men do have a general hatred in Scotland towards women. So if you want to tell the audience about that theory and that history story.
Right. So prior to, what was it, anyway, King James I of Scotland came in, and
And just for those that's watching, King James is actually Queen Mary of Scots' son, because a lot of people don't even know he existed. Never mind how he led his team and how he came to his demise. But a lot of people just think it ended like Mary Queen of Scots, but there was a King James who was her son. Anyway, sorry, Michelle, just continue.
Yes, that's quite okay, because a lot of people don't even realise the Bible, which is his. But anyway, when he became king and started ruling, females weren't allowed to own property or land. And when their husbands died, the first male heir was entitled to take it. So even from his mother, and he was allowed to take it, but it was down to him if she was allowed to stay part of the property. So he developed the civil court in Scotland, where females, because there was still a lot of single females and a lot of widows at the time who did go to court and protest, because it didn't have to be a direct heir, it was any male heir still attached to the family. So he developed that, and I hate him.
There's that emotional coming in there. Nick will get you on that emotion.
So what he did was he had to get his own bride, which was Anne from Denmark. And while he was in Denmark looking at his wife-to-be, the witch craze had started there in Europe. So when he came back across here, she came afterwards, and there was a storm that blew the ship further up Scotland. And but what he did was start the witch craze here in Scotland, where we ended up, our relatives ended up being tortured, absolutely tortured, and by their own families, saying that they were a witch. So what would happen is they would class them as a witch in order to get property, and the property never always went to the family, and because it went to court, and the court could take it, or the church could take the properties. So but most of the time it went to the family, but they accused him of witchcraft just in order to get land. But it was also a political thing from King James's point of view. So he did this because there was only, sorry, it looks like I'm getting the fingers, 2 people in going for the throne of England, and from Elizabeth I. And because she had no heirs, so she had 2 nephews, one being King James and one being the other one. He accused women of being witches, connected it to his cousin, but he didn't kill his cousin. He exiled his cousin out of the country. Therefore, the only person who could take the throne was King James. Very clever, and men have used women, and he used nearly 3,000 females to stay at a point by having them tortured to make it so. But Elizabeth, Queen Elizabeth I, never at once indicated there was no people killed in England under the witch craze until King James took the throne. And in order to appease him, they started having witch trials and crazes for a short period of time in England. And but it was all political, all to gain from a woman who had the royalty, who had an heir, who had a house, who had land, and a political clout. And he took it. So, so that's where the hatred comes in even more, to take, because females got the right to own their property through King James, and he also gave the right to do it. But he is also the only king ever in the history, to the best of my knowledge, to write 2 books. No other king or queen has ever written a book and had it published, and he did. He made the King James Bible, which is our king. Our king created the most popular Bible throughout the whole of the world, basically stolen from other Bibles, and then he added into that Bible one simple line, and it's in Exodus, if you want to look it up, 22.18. Thou shalt not suffer a witch alive, given the right to accuse.
So he basically took Jesus's dad's story and made it his own.
Yes, basically, and it was all political. So our King James book, when people go to church today, is reading a book that one was stolen. It was an old Bible. It was called the Geneva Bibles, and there was like 56 of them, I think it was. And he put them all, got scribes to put them all together. But that was the bit of text that he added in, was nobody shall suffer a witch alive. So just kill us. Just kill us.
But wait a minute, was the Bible not a biblical story that was wrote by, I don't know, I know I shouldn't take the rip, but I will. But the wee guy Muhammad, that his flock of sheep was on the thing where the wee guy, what was his name? No Moses, or or Davy, or Peter, or James, or whatever one he did, sat there and went, Jesus was alive 300 years ago, and I'm going to write a wee book about him. So, and he just thought, oh, I'll just write something in and then sell that one.
Yes. So, yeah. And I have an opinion on the Bible, full stop.
So that's a whole nother show.
It is. It's, to me, just political, and maybe a little newsletter that went out every couple of months, like you see for politics now. But yeah, he did that. But it was the torture devices that come to us females, and that is horrendous. So a Scottish male made what they call the bridle. So if you don't know what a bridle is, it's the same as what you put on a horse for going horse riding, but it was a metal cage, and on the metal cage there was a bit that went in the tongue, and it had spikes, so a female couldn't speak, and they would either parade her around the town or the village, or tie her outside somewhere in public, to humiliate her, and occasionally put a bell on her just to shun her up. And this might have just been because she spoke out like a female does. So yeah, so we invented, us Scots invented very many torture things that you see on films these days. They pretty much all came from us. But yeah, the bridle was made for the wife.
Just to interject, it's just because Scotland were great at inventing things. We do have a long list. That just happens to be the darker side of our inventions. But we do have the monopoly, and that's a fact, on being people that have actually invented more than most countries across the world.
It is true. It is true. Us Scots are great inventors. Clearly,
even bridles for wives.
Yeah, not just bridles. We had collars that were the same heavy metal. They were in spikes, so you couldn't put your head down. It would stab you round here. And they were heavily used in torturing females, to admit that she was a witch and that. So she would be tied up. And I believe you can still see it, but not 100% sure on that. When I get time off of work, I will go past and I will check to see if you can still see the collar, so the witch's collar, because that is at Ladybank, which is here in Fife, and that's so. Now that I knew about the collar, I didn't know where it came from, and that's so it's not far from where I am, so I'm going to take a wee gander past one day and see if it's there, because that would be interesting to look at. Not that I fancy putting on that type of collar.
No, if you like to try it for me and let me know how that goes, I'm more than up to then speak about it on your behalf. But as in trying it out, you're absolutely all right. So this is a valid point. Wait till I write this in. I reckon that narcissism is at all-time high for both genders. I totally agree. I've noticed the Ginger have a big part to play also, Amanda, and I did find out it's an epidemic in the UK. I honestly do agree with that statement, because I really, it's like, that's why I picked yourself, because you're not narcissistic. You love males. You have no need to be. You didn't want to come on here and be higher than Nick. You just wanted to show where this distaste for women may have originated in Scotland. You also wanted to show that I do believe Nick did have a study for 7,000 people, and I do believe I'm going to sit and collate my own studies with my manager and put big surveys out there that maybe collate more to see what a woman really wants from a women perspective, because it does interest me. But I do believe that narcissism is a whole, and what I think is really, really horrible is it's not educated or spoke about enough how many women are now narcissistic and really have tortured men, and they do it so much better and cleverer than what men can do it, because they then play the victim, which makes it hard for, especially that's where I get angry, which makes it hard for people that have been true victims of narcissistic behaviour and domestic stuff and things like that, especially because women will just decide, well, you want to go away with such and such, I'm going to tell everybody you've done this and you've done that, and belittling men and their status, and well, where do you work? I'm in the top of an empire, basically saying they wouldn't accept that from males, however doing it themselves now. But so that's a definite valid point.
It is. And I don't know what's going on really in the world, and being now single, and being, like you said a couple of weeks ago, on the dating apps. Now, I haven't been on the dating app for over a year, because I do not need that pictures. They're not photogenic. I don't want to see it, but I would like to get to know personalities. But there's not nothing to get to know, and there's no conversation there, so it becomes stale. and he had said something about it. I went and forgot that we're asking for too much on these dating apps. I don't even get a sentence out, and I'm just thinking, why did you send me a picture like that?
I believe in, I mean, I know obviously there's people out there genuinely seeking, but I believe that dating apps have just became, and especially with the likes of social media, Instagram, we're all going for a look now. I've had boyfriends, don't get me wrong, my 2 long-term relationships are not really anything to write home about, but I have never, and I can say this hand on heart, I have never been attracted to people say, what's your type? And I don't have a type. I have an energy. And maybe the 2 times when I'm into long relationships, my battery wasn't charged or I wasn't plugged in. I'm not too sure, right? But I don't believe that. And how can you go and look? Because how many people have you actually not second glanced and then sat down and spoke to them and then within the evening fancied the pants off them because of their conversation, their charm, their wit, the way they speak, their manners, all these different things that nobody seems to care about anymore. It's how they look.
Yeah. Well, I have to say that I haven't dated any men with status. That's not true. I married into status, and I divorced and left with nothing bar my children. So status doesn't give you everything. I walked away from millions. And just so you know, I have no millions. I am a carer. We don't get paid that much money. But yeah, I don't, it's not about money. It's not about status. Yes, I do not want somebody who is just a professional dole user. I don't want one. Do we still call it the dole? Am I being very old? And I would like to see people with ambition like myself. And I am always doing education. I'm always wanting.
I think what, basically being honest, I think that I would definitely like somebody to be financially on par with me now, because I have been completely depleted and in the red by being with somebody that wants to keep up with the Joneses but doesn't have the financial backing to do so. And then shaming me for not being able to meet up with something that he was borrowing or taking off others. You know what I mean? And then I would feel, what do you mean you've not got that? What you doing with it? And well, I'm out working 12-hour shifts at that time. I was working in an autistic young adult centre, and it was three shifts on with a baby of 5 months, and then 3 shifts off. You know, I didn't earn crazy amounts of money, but I was shamed for not having the readies on the quick thing. Do you know what I mean? So it's just basically, it's trying to find a middle ground. And I think we've got to that stage in life where some women that are maybe defeated and feel that they're not getting enough because they're powerful and everything else, and men who are maybe not powerful yet or want to be powerful are blaming women for that. Do you know what I mean? So it's basically trying to kind of find the middle road, you know, and not blame each gender, and know there's so many different diversities out there that work even within the same gender relationships. In fact, it is a proven fact, and it's out there, that the most successful, longest marriages are within same-sex marriages with males. So to say that men and women need to be on par, well, how can it be the case when 2 men can actually, they're both male, but can have a more happy relationship, maybe because they don't try to go in competition with each other. But then, as I've said in times as well, I've got friends that come to me, and why do people that are in relationships always go to their single friend for advice? That's a show for another day as well. They always come to somebody that's not in a relationship and hasn't got any decent relationships to go by and say, what do I do? Well, basically, what I do what I didn't. You know what I mean? You know, do what I didn't. But I do think that I know that Nick comes from a good place, and I know what he's trying to say, but I do think his total dismissal of the women view and saying, well, I got a survey of 7,000 people, is really then putting it down to pulling women down, saying, you don't know what you're talking about, you're a woman. And that's not how we're going to get anywhere.
If we did a survey on that one statement that Nick said, I think you would find that most people, including males, would say that he has maybe got an issue with his own mother from a psychological point of view, or that he's wanting a woman to be kept in the house because basically he can't look after himself because he's not capable of cooking his own tea and washing his own clothes and making a decision on his own without having a woman present. So I would like to see a wee chart done on what people would think of that statement.
Well, I know most of the people in my comments were with you on what you said. I have spoke to Nick on and off camera, and they are different. They are different. He's more. I understand his motivation for what he's doing, but at the same time as well, I think it comes into that whole battlefield again. Do you know what I mean? But I do understand that, and genuinely, he has a loving relationship. That he's in a relationship, he has been in a successful, from his words, I've not seen it personal, and we're not in that personal level, but he's been in a successful, because most people are saying, bitter man on his own, and I can confirm that he's not a bitter man, and I can confirm that I have seen the evidence, and because unless that was a ghost in the background, he definitely isn't lying about having a partner. So I know that he's not even got that. But another thing with me doing studies, because I'm doing my next book, Living with a Narcissist, because the other one comes out next week, so I like writing. So my next book's Living with a Narcissist, and I've been doing research, and the thing that pops up time and time and time again, which again it's women's fault, really, you know what I mean? Because predominantly in that era when they're doing the test, not so much in the future, will be a different story, but in the now, the mother, who, if you don't have a decent mother, if you don't have a mother who nurtures and loves you and cares for you, you could have the best dad in the world if you're a male, but if you don't have that nurturing background for the mum, that's sometimes what actually creates, or is believed to create, the narcissistic view of a man.
Yeah, well, in the reverse of that, and maybe he did suffer in the same way.
I don't know.
Males grew up without their fathers being present, and the only time they were present was when they were drunk, and they were out working, they were drinking the wages up, they were abusive when they came home, neglectful, and all the rest of it. And that still happens today, but it's higher on drugs, even though we are still quite high on alcohol, and we have now the same situation still going on today, where parents, not males, parents are not present for their children because of substance abuses. So it's not fair to blame it on one parent, because as a straight single mum, and I didn't drink. My kids have never once they've seen me drunk. And my eldest is 30 on Thursday, and there's a thing. I was also a single mum at 16. I noticed I had a wee issue with body counts and having that kind of life. Well, I'm okay. I'm quite delighted that I'm 46 and now got my life to me and my wages. And I had 4, so and I've managed perfectly fine. So
yeah, and it's like someone else said as well, when we make that statement, we're bitter, but when maybe the likes of Nick and that make the statements about, they're just factual. So it's like, it's not really, why are we bitter and they factual? Do you know, I think the problem is trying to find a blame for dysfunction within the family, and whether you're in the same relationship, you could be a same-sex relationship, you could be a one-parent family, you could be the old school nuclear family, you could be any of these and be dysfunctional, because what it comes down to, I think, is actually the build-up and the character of the person. Do you know what I mean? It doesn't actually mean, I know fantastic fathers who have took on their children. I've got a good friend who I'm meeting for a coffee tomorrow who brings up his daughter admirably on his own and doesn't expect to get the big, look at me, I'm a wonderful father, you know. And I also get the mothers who have done both jobs, went round football stadiums, went round boxing, done all the man's sports, well, predominantly what they call men's sports, and been there. And I've also seen 2-parent families take one luxury holiday a year, and the child spends the rest of the time with the nanny or the nursery. So I do think being present would be more of what develops our children in a more better environment, actually blaming the way women have become, or the way men have become, or the way society's became, because everything evolves. It's like a lot of people are not liking the way things are evolving, and you do have the right to that opinion, and I do have my opinions on it. However, the fact of the matter is, part of the human condition is to evolve, and if we don't evolve, we stay in bridles.
We do. We're gagged for life, and I love the word dysfunctional. And that's a coined phrase. Is there anything that's actually functional, and whose functionality is it? Because it was set up by the church and the government. It's all institutions, and they are not functional. Clearly, look at the COVID report. It's going to take 3 years to get that in. Why?
You know, it's definitely, we'll not go on that in case we get a hang with it. We will not go down that road, you know, before we get all the, especially if my sister's listening, she'll be right on that as well, Michelle. It must be the name. But I do understand where, I do believe that I certainly know because of what I got up to, because my mum just believed in working. My mum believed that having money was more important than being there. And I've been the opposite. Apart from when I listened to my mum and the narcissistic kind of partners I had saying, you need to work, you need to work, you need to provide, you need to work, you need to work, you need to work. And I worked when my oldest was young, very young. And she actually took her first steps with her childminder. That is actually the worst thing that I've ever experienced. When I get phoned to say that my daughter had taken her first steps and I wasn't present, a lot of people are, oh, Quail, I was destroyed. So although I always worked when they were young, I had to, because other people wouldn't work, you know what I mean? I had to, one of my children, I had to go out and work full time because they wanted that lifestyle that they had before, and they would take it off whoever they could in their family to get that lifestyle. And I wasn't used to other people buying me essentials like cookers and stuff. I was used to working for it. I was just at the most borrowing the money off my mum and then paying her back. But I was never one for, well, we don't work, or we can't have this, or we can't, and I don't mean luxuries, I mean essentials. You know what I mean? And well, if I have to be at home, then you should be at work. You know what I mean? If that's the way we're going to go down, you should be working. You know, that's that. I was brought up with a work ethic. I was brought up that if you wanted to get anything, you should go out and provide it. Obviously, mental health and stuff happened to me through time where I did have to take time out with certain situations, especially in recent years. I don't think I've ever been so emotionally bad and down with stuff that I did the previous years, which I happened to be public about, obviously because the type of career I'd picked at the time. But up until that point, leaving that situation and getting myself back out there, I didn't have those. I always thought, and I only work part-time, and I definitely see the stability difference. My older one doesn't seek, but I've got to reassure her that she's accepted and she's loved, and you know, and my so self-sufficient, which is one of the good things. I mean, she's just went off, done her thing. She, you know, she can go to Edinburgh, but at the same time as well, the other two kind of need me more. They check in more because they've been used to me being around. Do you know what I mean? So I do believe that it doesn't matter which parent.
Males, aren't they?
What?
Your other two is two males?
No, two girls. My older two are girls and my younger one is a boy.
And I've noticed that my two boys check in more with me than my girls. My eldest will text every day, and it's something about nothing and all the rest of it. But yeah, no, my boys have been the ones that have checked in more than my girls. But I'll tell you what I laughed at a couple of months ago is my kids didn't realize I worked when they were younger. And I thought, they were like, you didn't work? And I was like, I didn't what? Fair enough, they were part-time jobs, but my kids actually didn't think that I worked up until like just not long ago. And I was actually kind of gobsmacked that they thought I was always there. And I was. So there was a big chunk, a period of time that I was there. But I was also, I worked 3 jobs at one time. I got up in the morning and opened a garage and did the pumps and the papers and everything. And then I walked and went away and washed inside the stores. And then at 1:00, I went and started a shift at the pub until 7. And So I don't really understand how my kids can't remember that. But if you go to them, do you remember the after school club? They were like, yeah, it was great. And I was like, cost me a fortune, cost me half my wage.
Because that was before we get massive reductions in it. If we were single parents, we got, the thing. But it's and also a point. So, do you get back to what I was saying? Obviously, Nick massively triggered you. You got in touch and goes, "I need to come on about the Scottish history, the way I believe that." So, do you believe there's any valid, without being personal? Because I didn't let him be personal towards people or saying it and presume stuff about his thing. That's how I've always kind of pulled it back, because it's not about being personal towards Nick, and it's being personal to his point of view. So do you believe that there's any truth in the point of views that Nick had made?
I 100% agree that males and us females are castrating males. I do agree with that. I think that females have took this wave of feminism and took it to a height that I'm not comfortable with. And I thought I was like the demon in this world until just recently, because I haven't been paying attention. I've always seen that we should be working together no matter what. And if somebody needs to pick up the extra burdens, just say like one loses a job and somebody else has to pick up the weight for a while, that's fair. That happens, because anybody could lose their job in a relationship, male or female. But yeah, I totally agree that we are being horrible to males, and I really don't know the root cause, other than the fact that we have been dominated as females. But I don't think that the younger generation have been that dominated, but they have got parents, which is going to be an awful thing to say, of the 90s, where that parent was tripping out of their face, going to all the raves, all the rest of it, and that they have been neglected in that sense, and forgot that they're to grow up.
There's been a consensus, and even my mum said to me, my mum kind of touched me home when I was younger, and and my mum helped out a lot with my older child, and especially when I was going out. And my mum had said something to me very poignant, which I've got to admit is like, it was like a light bulb moment. And she said to me, we're living in a world where women and men that choose to have children then think they have a right to free time, and I was like, and she says, yeah, it's very nice to get a bonus and to get a day off and to go, but you all deserve me time. Well, if you deserve me time, don't have children.
Yeah.
But this was also coming for a woman that worked all the time, and we went and stayed at our aunties all weekend. Do you know what I mean? So even when she wasn't working, and she went to the bingo every night, but it was something that she said that was quite poignant. If you choose to have children, then don't choose to then say that you should actually, you should actually, what was the word? Be the right to free time. But also, if you don't get free time, where do you recharge from? Because especially if you're now, it used to be a 2-parent job. Like when your dad comes home, you better not have said that, because dad's going to, and there is a dynamic that's not there now. But my mum strongly is old school, and I'm keeping this week. I'm keeping my friend's children, because she's got 5, and and if I had a people carrier, I would take the 5, but I don't. So, because I do believe that everybody deserves that break. And this thing, well, you've had so many children, you shouldn't get a break. But my mum is very much the rule: your children, you raise them.
I never got a break. Ever. I never got weekends. Or anything. My parent didn't help me whatsoever. Basically, the other old saying is, you made your bed, therefore you lie in it. And I really did lie in it. I didn't go out. I was also the boring friend, along with the mouth, and I didn't drink. And so I didn't get invited out. So I was even more isolated, and I never got me time, and I didn't even get it on the toilet, let's be honest. No parent does, and I certainly did not even have it there. But I love me time now. And it's not just 30 minutes, because it's recommended that you should have me time at least 30 minutes a day, and remember to give yourself the self-love. Well, I go out my way to do that for about 3 hours per day now, normally in the morning, when I'm really not in the mood for doing nothing. So, but yeah, I never got any breaks. And I used to be, don't get me wrong, I was very jealous of watching other people go away on holidays and buying clothes and all the rest of it. And I was like, how can they do that? I was working 3 jobs, but I gave my kids technology. That's what they wanted, and so I'm going to cast myself as an awful parent. I stopped Christmas in my house over 15 years ago. I did. And this is because of a personal reason. It wasn't my children. I don't drink, therefore I don't appreciate people coming to my house on Christmas Day drunk, and that's what was starting to happen. But the last straw for me was when my partner at the time's cousin took me by the throat, and I was like, no more. And I stopped Christmas, and I gave my kids cash. I just gave them cash, and that was it. And so people go, oh, you have to have Christmas. Well, no, you don't, because if Christmas is tied with abuse,
Oh, have we lost her? Michelle is buffering. Now, what I'll do is, and just in case she doesn't come back, we've nearly reached our time anyway, so I don't know if she's actually came off, you know what I mean? So I'm not sure if that's what's happened. It may be a technical issue. But yeah, if she doesn't come back, we're going to wrap up anyway. I just wanted to hear a woman's perspective on thing. I do think that Nick does have valid points, and I also do believe that Michelle has valid points, and I would like to wrap up this wee small debate. I'm hopefully may get maybe she's back. I hopefully may get Nick and Michelle on together to speak it out a bit more thingy. Nick can be very respectful to the other person. He does do very calm podcasts on over in TikTok. We Say It podcasts, and I do believe he gives everybody their opportunity, and he usually has 3 females on the panel and 3 males. So that's why I would like to wrap up with the fact I think he has a good... Oh, you went away, you were gone.
I just died. I was like, oh my God.
I was going to wrap up anyway, because that's us reached our kind of time bracket. But if you want to look into more stuff that Michelle said, look at your King James history, you know, about the torture things, the witch period within our time, which was basically suppression of women, because I don't see many men that were classed as witches. Am I right? So I do believe it was another instrument. If a woman didn't behave or she tried to do things out of turn, we could just point the finger and call her a witch. And today we can just point the finger to either sex and call them narcissistic as the new word for witch. You know what I mean? And that's the thing. The point I would like to get is I believe that we're looking for a problem within us all, when we maybe just look within and see what we can fix there, find our level, find our safe boundaries, and only allow people into our energies that are equipped to their boundaries. And we all have the right to have our standards, have our boundaries, have a type of person we want to spend our time with, and have our own life as long as we are not damaging others. And that was the point I wanted to make with both of you coming on. But it's thank you so much for coming along, Michelle. It's been very interesting. And for someone who is not public like Nick or does any of this stuff, you really did show yourself remarkably. And with that, that has been Decuttlers Talk Show. Next week, we do have a very interesting story about a man who's been missing 47 to 48 years, went missing out his own garden, 3-year-old in Irvine, which is 15 minutes from me, and his sister still to this day campaigns to try and find out what exactly happened to her brother. But anyway, I've been Declutter on my talk show, as I now call it, because it's more that than it is a podcast. Anyway, thank you very much, Michelle.
Thank you, Dee.